today is we're going to go over the different types of drain calls that we get. And then, so we'll talk about the different drains, and then usually what the main causes that drain to back up. And then we'll talk about the access point of how do we clean that drain. And then we'll kind of go through some of this equipment and show you the different pieces of equipment that we use. Like we get calls all the time where people say, oh, I went to Home Depot and rented a snake, but which one did you rent? They have no idea that there's this many pieces of equipment, and there's actually even more, but we couldn't bring them because they're on jobs. But we will show you this one video that's going to be on here, which is called hydrojetting, and we'll show you like its effectiveness. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. So last week we talked a lot about main lines, main drains with the clean outs and all that type of stuff. And then what creates, what causes the problem, which I think I already mentioned. Tree roots cause the problem. And then also we talked about the backwater valve that you guys saw. So, and we got one of these clean outs. So this is a different type of clean out than we had talked about before. So I'll kind of spin it as we go. Remember we did the bullhorn thing, or you have a one directional. Then this particular fitting is kind of rare, but they call it a Pomona T. So you can go down, and then in the middle, you can see that there's actually a hole in the middle. So you have to try to get your cable to go one way or the other, either up to the house or down to the street. Problem is, if there's full of water, it's very difficult to find how to do that. But I'll tell you a little trick. So if I'm running I might need your help. I'll just kind of hold these things. And we're probably not going to get this cap off. This stuff's all leaded together. But if I and you guys will be able to mess with this stuff a little bit later, and you guys can run the machines. Like we'll take them outside and we'll clean this pipe and show you the difference of what it looks like after we descale it and stuff like that. But a little trick. So if you do rent a machine, let's say at Home Depot or whatever, so, and on this particular one, I don't have any blades in here. So if I have a cable and I'm going to run it down a line, but I don't know if it's a single, a double, I have no idea, right? But let's say the house is over there, street's over there, and you don't always have the opportunity to get your machine positioned in front of the clean out. And keep in mind, this will be at ground level, right? So I'd be snaking it in this direction from the top going down. But what happens is, if I want my cable to go that way, I want to put the machine on this side of it, because when I run the cable, as you can see, it's bending. It's forcing to the back side of this pipe, and then going to drive it underneath. The cable always wants to go under the machine. So if I'm on the side and I'm going down, now I have a 50-50 chance of which direction that's going to go. And if I want to go to the house, which sometimes the house is only a foot or two over there, what I'll try to do is position the machine on the side, and I'll try to force my cable to this side of the pipe to get it to go under if I want to go upstream, if I know there's a two-way clean out. So for you guys, did you know about that?
Yes.
About your cable wanting to go under the machine?
Cable always wants to go under.
Yeah, so it always wants to go under. So if you do rent a cable, then or a machine from Home Depot or whatever, so that's one quick thing. Now sometimes people will use a smaller machine, and we'll talk about all the different machines and what they cover. So you could see the difference in the size cable.
Sorry, I hope I'm not blocking anybody.
We actually could probably set that down now.
Okay.
I just wanted to explain that whole curve. Thank you, Vanna. Vanna, all right. So you can see the different size in the cables, right? If I try to run this smaller machine in there and I get tangled up on some roots, it's flexible enough to where you could really tie it in a knot pretty easily. So if there, let's say there is tree roots in the line, and I get caught up on some tree roots, it's just gonna bind. Now this thing will just tie itself into a knot like a big pretzel, and then if you've already been through a few turns, trying to get that thing to come back out is almost impossible. So, and this cable is gonna break a lot easier than something that's a little bit bigger and thicker, more heavier duty. So typically, we're using we call it a mainline machine. It's 11/16 cable, and we'll use that on 3, 4, and 6-inch pipe. There is no 5-inch pipe. So those 3, 4, and 6 we'll use for that one. This machine primarily is just this, we call it our kitchen machine because most kitchen lines or laundry lines are in 2-inch pipe. So we use this middle one for 2-inch pipe really. I'll let you guys catch up. So we call it a main line machine. So it's only for the main drains, which are usually 3 and 4 inch. We talked about that in the original drawing. All the waste lines are typically 3 and 4 inch in residential. And sometimes you'll come across 6 inch.
And the cable is 11/16.
11/16 cable.
And then the kitchen.
And this one we call it a kitchen machine because that's what we primarily use them for, kitchen and laundry. Or we call it the 1/2-inch machine. It's a 1/2-inch cable.
What size was for the kitchen again?
Kitchen's 1/2-inch.
And you said the pipe is 2-inch?
Mm-hmm. And then this is our little baby. And this is our 1/4-inch machine, we call it. And there's still hair on it, this is gross.
I'd say no, it's real.
Yeah, so, and this is our 1/4-inch machine. And we usually use this on 1.5-inch pipe. So something that would be 1.5 inch is gonna be usually bathrooms, kitchen, tubs. Showers a 2-inch drain, but we use it because primarily we're using this just to remove hair. Like we're not cutting roots, we're not trying to break rust off a pipe or do any kind of degreasing, none of that stuff. So this really is just our little hair grabber, and that's it. So we might do it down a bathroom sink, a bathtub, and a shower. Usually those are the only 3 that we use this cable on.
It's a 1 inch?
1.5 inch.
Oh, inch.
Mm-hmm. So the four lines is going to be 1.5 inch. Yeah, that's the smallest. 2-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch. Those are typically the 4 size pipes that you're going to see within a house. So 1.5 inch, 1 machine. 2-inch, 1 machine. 3 and 4, 1 machine. And you imagine if you cable this line or cable the main line and you got wrapped up in tree roots with this thing, it really knots. I mean, you could literally like tie it into a knot, you know? So like it can knot up pretty easily. So we gotta use the right machine for the right access. And they all have different lengths too. We carry a 35-foot cable in here because typically you're not gonna have, it's not gonna be more than 35 feet from, let's say a tub, a shower, or even a lav, a bathroom sink. You're not even gonna need 35 feet to get to the main 3-inch line, because if it clogs in the 3-inch line, well then we need to be using a different machine altogether. So some people carry a 50-foot cable in this thing. I have no idea why. They sell them and people order them and use them, but it's useless. Because if you don't use the whole cable, like this one right now is really like greasy and slimy, probably from like soap scum and that type of stuff. But if you don't pull the cable out and use it on a regular basis, what happens is it'll just stay curled up in the machine, and then it just gets rusty, and then now you're throwing the cable away anyhow. So we went from 50s to 35 footers.
Is that the same for the other one?
And then this particular one is 80 feet. It's very rare that, I mean, usually maybe 40 to 60 feet is you'll find a kitchen or a laundry is away from a bathroom. Remember I was talking about that last time where we want to like count off footage, right? So if I go into a house and it might even be your house, right? So you may have kitchen, or let's say you drive into your driveway. This is pretty standard. Go in your driveway if you're especially on a single story. Laundry is usually in the garage. Kitchen's usually on the same side of the house, and then you have a living room and all that, and then the living quarters and bathrooms are on the far side. Typically, it's not more than 40 to 60 feet to get there. So we keep an extra 20 foot, so it's 80 feet of cable, just in case we have to go down a roof vent. So we got another, 10 to 15 feet of roof vent before we, go on the underneath towards that bathroom. And it gets us there 99.9% of the time. And then the other thing is, on this machine, some companies, and even if you go rent a cable, they'll usually have 75 to 100 feet of cable. We carry 150 feet of cable. And that's because we also go through roof vents. So you may have a roof vent, on a house. Well, the vent might be up, towards the peak of the house, right? So we actually leave the machine on the ground. And I'll talk a little bit more about this device that's in the front right here with the knobs and stuff. But we set the machine on the ground and we run the cable, just pull the cable up over the ladder, and then we go to that roof vent. Well, and then once we get up there, you might be 15, 20 feet down before it makes the turn, depending on how, the pitch of the roof. Then you have another 10 or 15 feet before you get to the edge of the roof, and then another 10, 12 feet. So you're talking 30, 40 feet of cable before you even get down in the drain, right? So, and then from the house, think about where your bathroom is and where the street is. What's that typically? Usually about 100 feet. I mean, not always, but anything over 100 feet, you should have a clean out. So that's why most people, or even rental yards, they use 100-foot cables, because every 100 feet you have to have a clean out. That's like code now if you were putting a sewer line in your house, every 100 feet.
Would that be a job, like, for two-man or
One. Now, there are some companies that do say it's a two-man job, and then they charge you for an extra guy. So we train our guys to do it with one guy. And we could actually we could demonstrate it and show you how we do it.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
So we'll show you that. And then, so maybe what I'll do is I'll talk about this whole thing. We call it a transmission in the front, or some people call it a feeder. So we could feed the line, but also when we go back and forth, we're kind of going forward, reverse, so we call it a transmission or a feeder. It's kind of a combination of both. So what happens is we tighten down that cable, or that knob, it'll put tension on the cable with rollers in there that move, and if I go one way, it's gonna feed it in, and then I push it the other way, it'll usually feed it out. We try to teach our guys not to use that feeder going in, because we want to feel what we're up against. And plus, when we're pulling the cable out, we can count footage. So if I went to a house and went, okay, the street is the furthest point, and the clean out's right here, I got 80 feet. Well, there's no sense in running 150 feet if it's only 80 feet to the city. So, and I've seen guys do it, they run 80 feet and they get stuck in a city line two doors down. And they're bundled up in a whole bunch of roots, and now we can't get it out. Now we gotta get the city out because you're not supposed to touch their line. It just becomes a whole different animal. So we count that footage. Well, if you have that feeder just feeding, it's really hard to count that footage going out. And you have no idea where the cable is. So if we're pulling the cable out and we're pushing it in the drain, we could pull it out in 1 to 2 foot increments, and you just count it as you're going in. Go, okay, I should be pretty close. And then you can go like an extra 10 feet or so just to make sure, double check. And then tighten it up, flip it in reverse, and now you can take a brake bite, and we use this thing here. It's a foot pedal. So we plug it into the side of the machine, and then we step on it, which triggers it on and off, and then we just plug our extension cord right into that. So this is just an interruption switch that we can use with our foot, and frees, keeps our hands free to do whatever else. Coming back is fine. Now you can stand up, because it's not very comfortable, when you're squatting down and you're on the ground, one knee on the ground, and you're cleaning the line. That's why most plumbers have bad knees. So for you guys that are getting into it, your knees are going to be toast by the time you're like 45. But,
Or 29.
Or 29, yeah. So yeah, he gets up and his knees are all tweaked, and you also clean a lot of drains. But, so when you're down on the ground, it just, it's a little taxing on the body. And so you can stand up and feed that machine back in. Does anybody have any questions on any of this so far?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you explain the reason why we don't use blades?
So I think I touched on this on running blades in the very beginning of the class, the first class I think it was, or second class. Does anybody remember why it was? Any of you guys remember?
Because you can cut into electrical lines or gas lines.
Yep. Remember we talked about the Ontario mills running all their water and gas and all that stuff from way over here? So, and we had just line after line. Or if you see water bubbling up and you can smell gas, obviously there's a gas line there. Especially if you're running a machine, you start to see bubbles, stop, because you're gonna catch it on fire. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have blades to do it, but we don't usually go into the line with blades when it's backed up. So usually we'll clear the line first, and then we'll come back and address it, and that's where we get into different types of cleaning. So it could, and then we have a ton of different cutters. Depending on the size of the pipe, some of them have little serrated blades, some are smooth blades. This one you can kind of build your own blade, and it's pretty monstrous once you build it. Come on, baby. So, now you can build a pretty good size blade that's going to do some damage. So, and you can also use these other blades, if you want to make it a little bit smaller or whatever. And then we have another thing, a retriever. So if there's something in the line that we're trying to get out, then we'll usually run a camera with this, and we'll stretch this spring out a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little more when we get to those toilet augers over there. But we'll stretch this spring out a little bit, use a camera, go in. We've pulled out keys, all kinds of stuff from this. So yeah, going in the original on the original call when it's backed up, we don't have blades on there. This is the reason why we don't. So we just have to educate the client on why we don't do it. And has anybody here ever had their main drain backed up at their house? You? Anybody else? Have you ever had it? You had it?
I had that. Well, when I was renovating my house, I had to they came in and checked it, and when the inspector inspected the house and flushed the toilet, just didn't make that usual gurgling sound.
Mm-hmm.
So he noticed that on the side of the house, the cleanout was open.
And flown
It
out?
was all flushing through there.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to figure out where the clog was coming from. So I guess there's another clean out in the garage too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the main one. And I don't know, he was snaking it for a long time, and I don't know, he ended up getting it fixed, but he ended up coming back another day. It was pretty messy.
So like if you guys, let's say your main line was backed up, right? And would you guys think about saying, hey, you see a cable like this with just nothing on the end, what's that gonna do? Would you say, hey, put a cutter on that thing? Would you ever even ask about that? Would you know about that? So, yeah, some guys will just automatically have, blades on there, which to me is super dangerous just from some of the stuff that I've seen over the years. So that's why we went to no blades. And then once we get the line up, because we're always gonna get the line open, unless it's completely broken, but we should at least be able to get that line open to where we can get the water to flow, and then now we can put the camera down the line, see what we're up against, and there isn't a gas line or telecommunications or anything like that being bored through the line. We're just dealing with tree roots. Okay, cool. Now I can put the right blades on there to attack that, right? And we, before I go into the other stuff, so one way that we attack roots is with blades, right? There's another way that we attack them, which is called a hydrojetter. And this is a mini version of it that we use which is basically like a pressure washer for your house that we convert over with special nozzle and hoses. And then we can clean, it's like I'll show you the nozzle and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. But we also have we have a couple of big ones that are on trailers. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring it here. Hopefully before this class is all over, we could bring it here. And what sold me on it when I first bought it was the guy came out to do a demo, and is that camera in your way, Don?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay, I'll say if not, you can want to move over. So what sold me on it is he had a piece of pipe with a cap on it and put a regular broomstick in there and put the nozzle in there and kicked it on, and it was just shooting out like toothpicks. Like it just destroyed the whole broomstick. And I was like, you're not taking that home, you leave it right here because we could use this thing. So rather than digging up the line and you know, cutting it out and cutting the tree root and doing all that stuff, we could treat it from inside. So we can get all those roots cut out of there, and then we put a root killer in there, and it's actually a foaming root killer. So if you just put root killer, remember we talked about the draining, only 50% of the line actually holds water as it's going down. Well, typically tree roots are coming in on the top. So when we have these two mixtures that we put together, and it's a poison, you know, root killer, but it creates a foam. And you can't buy it if you're not a contractor, like you have to buy it through a contractor. And pest control, which I don't know why, you have to have a license, either one of those licenses to buy this stuff. But you mix it together, once the line's clear, flush it down the toilet, it's called Rudex. And we flush it down the line, it foams the whole entire line. So any little straggler of roots that are growing in, they'll now get the poison on them and then kill the roots, and usually kills them within about a foot to 18 inches outside the pipe. So that's how we eliminate the roots. You don't necessarily always have to dig them up and cut that section out. So where's he going? So I'm going to have him. When we do this descaling thing, we're going to take it outside because it gets kind of dusty. But we'll take it out there and show you how that works. And I think Brandon might have to do a little bit of setup on that. Here's the other thing about killing roots. So if I go in, cut roots out, and I've done this many times, I'm like, you know, we should at least apply root killer in here. We can see that there was tree roots with the camera. I got them all out now. Now's the time to put this root killer in there, right? And they'll go, nah, and it's pretty expensive. You know, it's like almost $500 for this root killer, right? But the alternative is going to be thousands of dollars to dig this stuff up. So, and it's just an expensive chemical, that's it. So what happens is, when you cut a root, within 48 hours, it saps over and seals itself again. So if you don't apply the root killer within the first 48 hours, then it doesn't do anything to the roots. So we want to cut that root, open the wound, and then poison it, because now it's a wide open, raw wound, right? So just like us, we get a scab, now all of a sudden we're good, right? So the trees do the same thing with sap, it's just their natural protection.
How compromised is the piping once roots begin to start getting infected? Are you looking at like a time period where it's, you know?
So typically, typically when a root grows in, I mean, it has to grow through the finest little cracks, and it's usually like when you come across clay pipe and things like that. And Orangeburg, we have another piece of that too, I'll show you a little bit more about that. So it usually grows in real fine, little tiny, we call them finger roots. So they'll go in real small, and then over time, what happens is, if you trim them out and you kill those roots outside, you're in good shape. But there are times where we get in there and it's already, the root is thickening and now cracking the line, you're kind of beyond that point. So then you just dig it up. Or, which we'll get into that a little bit later too, I'll show you, I'll just give you an example right now. So you can see this, we cut a big triangle out of this piece of pipe, right? And you guys can come look at it, and we have a whole box of gloves, so you can come check the stuff out afterwards, throw some gloves on. But inside here is a liner, and we'll bring the equipment in a couple more classes, and we're going to actually shoot a liner to show you what it looks like. So even if you have a big hole in the line, as long as we can get all those roots out of there, and this may be down at the street or in the street, right? And you get into the street or into the city parkway and things like that, it gets really expensive. Usually about a $10,000 jump just in city fees and all that stuff when you get into their area, on top of the repair. So if we find that we have a big hole and the root did get big enough and cracked it or whatever, what we'll do is just clean it out as best we can, and then we'll apply some root killer, and then we'll shoot the liner in there, and you basically have a brand new line. And it's super hard. So we just use the old line as our hose pipe. Matter of fact, on one of those videos, it's going to show you how we do it. It's an animated video, but you're going to get a good idea of how we do it. So let's go back to the hydrojetting. We'll watch this video. We'll play that first one, and this will show you kind of the power of how we clean a line versus just running a snake through it. And do you have the sound on here too?
Yeah, it should be working.
Okay.
That picture up, yeah.
Yeah. It's called the chicken salad sandwich. Have you guys ever showed a video like this to the client to show them? Have you ever seen the videos?
That's disgusting.
It's gonna get worse.
So you'll see how there's head, nozzle spraying backwards. That's to propel the hose going forward. And then in the front, there's a nozzle that's basically like a little water laser. And it's spinning, obviously. I mean, it doesn't take very long, like less than a minute, and this chicken is just going to be shredded to pieces. Like disintegrates. Oh. So that's really the video. That kind of shows you what a jetter can do to a line. And that's I think that was the only one that we had up there that was good. Okay. Yeah, so that shows you how fast that you can clean a line. And I mean, that was a chicken. Like, that's pretty dense, straight out of the package, and just rips it to nothing and just disintegrates it. So, and when I bought my first machine, like I said, it was a broomstick. So like, that's a pretty big root in a line if you have it like the size of a broomstick. And it'll do the exact same thing. It'll just shred it to nothing. So we'll try that. Anybody have any questions yet at this point? Good?
Yeah, I need you to go back to the root diagnosis, like from step one to how you lost me there. So you show up, there's water in the line, you put that down there with no blade, you get the water done, and then what do you guys typically do?
We run a camera.
Okay, every time, that's the process.
Right. So, and I mean, sometimes we'll bring that, we'll bring the cable back, and we might have baby wipes, like a whole bunch of them on there. And it's like, okay, let's do it again. Bring more baby wipes. But what are the baby wipes getting hung up on? Because I mean, you could flush it. They'll say flushable or flushable tampons or whatever. Like that stuff should go right through. So what's it getting stuck on? Is it getting stuck on tree roots? Is it getting stuck on, because it's cast iron and it's all rough and bumpy? Then we got to smooth that out, and so you don't have the problem again. So because you should be able to flush that stuff. If everything's perfect, if you have the right pitch, if the line is smooth, all that. But if there's tree roots, then we don't. So all of our guys that had cameras, I actually got a camera, and then we got a call that he needed it. So he's in Upland, and he's on a job right now. So he may bring the camera by where we can put it in the line. Tommy, yeah.
Yeah, you texted the address, I sent it to him.
Oh, so he's on his way?
I don't know if he's on his way, but I sent him the address.
To here?
Yep.
Okay, so he's probably on his way back now. So he'll bring the camera, and we'll show you the camera, what it looks like, going in the line, so you can see everything. And then we also have a really small camera that we use, and it's just like maybe on bathtubs or just down a sink or whatever. And we'll see if we can, and just that tiny monitor that's on it, and we can see just for little short things. And we'll also use these like underwater heaters to see if, where there's a leak, places you can't get to, behind dryers, washers and dryers, and that type of stuff. But not really, we don't really use this too much for sewer lines, or if we're just dropping down a clean out and we want to see like on a backwater valve. So usually the backwater valve that we talked about is usually right next to the clean out. So we could drop this down without getting the other camera out. We could just drop this down and look at that backwater valve. Is it rusted? The door halfway open? Is there something stuck in it? A Barbie doll or whatever? So we'll just check that out and see what it is. So I kind of kind of glad you brought that back up, because we jammed by it. I forgot because we don't have a camera here, so I didn't talk about it.
Take me from there. So then you send the camera down and you take some pictures and you can see what the problem is. Then when do you take the step of using the killer, or as opposed to trying to cut the roots down, or saying that the pipe couldn't handle a hydro jetter? Because like Elliot was saying, that thing must put tremendous pressure on the pipe.
Yeah.
So at what point do you say, we can't cut that with that cutter, it's gonna disintegrate more of the pipe, and then, is that when you say you gotta cut it up and put the liner in, or?
Yeah, so depends on the pipe and the condition. What kind of pipe and what kind of condition.
So the camera's gonna tell you a lot of that, right? You're gonna be able to see a lot more clear.
Right.
And then you tell by the root size, how far it's been and how long it's gone on?
Yep. And we'll be able to see the cracks. For instance, like if it's cast iron's pretty durable. But if we see that it's rotted out in the bottom, then we don't want to open those holes up bigger, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go, no, jetting's not a good option for this. You know, maybe we might try something else with descaling and try to, it's more of a softer touch. And I'll show you this. I'm not sure where Brennan went, but when he comes back, we'll set this up and I'll show you how that works. For example, with clay pipe, and this is actually going to be in our next class where we really start talking about the pipes and longevities and all that stuff. That's in our next one. But with clay pipe, they come in 3 or 5 foot sections. And basically, back in the old days, they have a hub on the end. So one is a straight pipe, and at the end of one has a hub. So you stick the straight pipe into a hub, and you put cement. The another, you just keep going. So you have all these connections. Now you buy pipe that's 20 feet long. Or we do a liner. I can have a 100-foot line. There's no joints at all because I shoot one line inside the existing pipe, right? So, but when you have, let's say, 3 footers, every 3 foot you have a joint, and they pack them with concrete. So they slide them together and pack them with concrete, and you have some roots that are growing in there. Well, not only when the roots are growing in, it's letting water out. Right? So you start to get, oh, here comes the camera. So you start to get water that will seep out from underneath the pipe. So let's just visualize underground. You got a 100-foot sewer line, and you have all these, every 3 feet, you got 30 connections, and a couple of them have roots in them. Well, they weaken that joint, and then what happens is water starts to get out below that joint, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of the term belly in the line, or a low spot, like that we call it, like a belly in the line. So what creates that sometimes is we get that joint starts leaking, the soil below it gets soggy, and now the line starts to sink. Or some people, if it goes too far, it'll collapse. So it'll usually start with a little bit of an offset, where if I wish I had a piece that had offsets, that would have been kind of cool. We have two lines that are joined up together, and it created so much of a leak, they'll start to slip off of each other. So when I run the camera down, if I can see the other end of the pipe, then I know that, okay, we got to dig it up and repair it if it's too bad. If it's just in the beginning stages, so it kind of goes in stages. So you can tell if you're looking at a line and it has huge offsets, and then once it creates the first one, now it's a domino effect. Now this one's sunk on this end, and now it just released the joint on the next end. Then that one leaks, joint. So if I see 5 joints that are having the offsets, or that belly of the line where it's holding water, that's what that means. So I mean, if I had like let's just say this was a sewer line. I mean, this is a very, very tiny version of a sewer line. But if you have a sewer line and it's on an angle, so water's going to flow down. But let's say we had those joints, and now it starts sagging right there in the middle of the sewer line. Well, if I put water in this end and this end, it's going to be holding in the middle. So we run a camera, and all of a sudden you go underwater, and you come out 15, 20 feet later. We go, okay, well, it's too far gone. You can't fix it. So now you got to dig it up, recompact the soil, and then re-level it and put a new line in. So it may not be a candidate for pipelining or something like that. Or even jetting. Why bother?
At what point do you figure out where to use the root killer?
So if there's just roots in there that
Very
get,
small amount, that's
Right.
what you use that for? It's not more severe growth that's in the pipe already?
So usually if you get bigger, like bigger roots, they'll usually come in the bottom of the pipe. Like they'll grow along the side of the pipe and then they'll just find their way and they're gonna try to seek as much water because they need more water than a smaller root. So they'll just come in on the bottom. I mean, how many times have you guys cut open dug up a line and you start cutting it and the root is like right on it. Now you have to chase that line because that root might go for 10 feet and it's just like impacted around that line. So you think that you're gonna dig up and do a little 3-foot repair. Next thing you know, you're 12, 15 feet down the line digging it up because that root's just following right along.
And you guys take pictures and send it back, and someone says, okay, what do you think? This is a candidate for this repair, or we should go forward? Is that how that works? It's like a couple of different people's eyes looking at it, or?
Yeah, so in our back office, we have guys in there that I would say on average, between 20 to 30 years experience. So everything that they do in the field, they're taking pictures, they're sending the videos, everything goes on our software, and then we look at it in the back end to make sure and see if it's a candidate for it. So it's not just one guy's opinion. Or if we can't really tell, because sometimes you just can't, they get a bad angle or glare on a sun, it's like, let us get one of the supervisors out. Like Brennan's one of our supervisors. So we'll get a second set of eyes on it if he's not sure.
What is the material that the mainline pipes typically are made from around here?
So around here, around here in Rancho, because a lot of the houses are newer, you're going to find ABS. But the ones that are that give us problems is cast iron, clay, and then this is called Orangeburg, which we'll talk about that. And hopefully we'll bring more samples of Orangeburg. And Orangeburg is made out of tar paper. And it was in the 40s, like went into war. They didn't have a lot of steel and all that stuff to make cast iron and all that. So then we went to, it's rolled tar paper. And that stuff doesn't even get glued together or packed with concrete or nothing. It just basically just gets pushed together. So it's horrible, and there's a lot of that in Ontario. So we replaced quite a bit of that stuff. Did that answer some of the questions? Does anybody else have anything to piggyback on that, or any questions?
Larry, just real quick, the roots, what do? They kind of lift up the pipes, they break them, or?
No, they'll just find water. Like even in a water line. Like sometimes we dig up a water line, even though that it's not leaking, but it's the roots will just seek water in general. So. They'll grow around the pipe, and if they find one little crack or they start getting big and they're pushing on a line, eventually the root will get big and push the line and it'll wind up creating a little gap, and that's it, game over. Now they just get in on a small scale, and over time they'll get bigger and bigger, and then like you'll hear the words like, oh, the pipe's collapsed. So that's probably one that has a big root on it and the little ones got in there, so now it's just done. So it'll kind of lift it and then clog it at the same time, and then just keep growing and split it.
I have a question there.
Okay.
My nephew, he lives over here in a housing tract in Fontana, and he was telling me his house is on a septic tank. And I go, there's no way your house is on a septic tank.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a method of finding that? Is the house is on a septic tank or on a city sewer?
That's a tricky one too, because so a lot of houses that are in the county areas, like Fontana has a lot of county areas, Chino has a lot of county areas. Typically county property, normally you're going to find it, or you can almost tell. So one of the indications that we kind of train our guys to look for is when you're driving down the street, and it's not always on point, but it's a good idea. So when you're driving down the street, if we see manholes in the street, most likely they're connected to the sewer. But there's some areas of Rancho where they have manholes, but not everybody went onto sewer. So they're still on septic. The sewer became available because they built a housing tract and they already ran the lines. So they'll stub the lines into the homes, and the second that house, their septic system fails, and they try to go get a permit to put a new septic system in, nope, you have sewer available, you have to connect onto it. So you gotta be careful with septic. Sometimes we find it where we go, oh, the street is 80 feet away and we have a clean out, and here we are running 80 feet of cable and the septic tank's 5 feet away. And then we go to pull it back and we're like, oh shit, can't get it out. It's just tangled in a big knot inside the tank. And that's happened to us a lot of times. but we'll usually ask, you know, are you on sewer or septic? Like, if we don't see any manholes, because they're not always available, so we'll ask. So sometimes, like in Ontario, they don't have manholes in the street. All their stuff runs down the back, the common area with the telephone poles. So, but there is manholes in people's yards back there. So not all of them are going to have it. And the manholes are every, 500 feet. So,
What on the water bill? The water bill.
yeah, so what Brendan's saying, sometimes you can see on your water bill, like you'll pay for sewer, right? And that it doesn't always hold true. Like if you have on your water bill, if your water and sewer is together and it says like $8 or $9, probably not hooked to the sewer. But if it's like, you know, 20 or 30 bucks, then you are. So if it's really small, they'll make you pay. If there's sewer available, you pay, because if, let's say that you're not on sewer, you're on septic, but at some point your stuff fails and you have to go to sewer. Well, every city's a little different, but you'll pay fees. What have you seen the fees from? $3,000-4,000 bucks up to 20,000.
Oh, yeah, to connect onto it?
Yeah, connection fees.
Yeah, because they'll backlog you for what your usage would have been.
So they'll
when they made it available.
go, you know, anywhere from just a couple grand for a connection fee, all the, you know, and I've seen them all the way up to 20,000-30,000. What have you guys seen? Anything higher than that, or?
Yeah, in the North Coast, they're to the point where they're still fighting the city, they get hit with 42,000.
42,000 just to hook to the sewer line.
I've heard that if you have septic, you usually don't have a trash disposal on the sink. Is that true?
No, you can.
You can?
Yeah, you can. They have special disposals for them.
For them?
But yeah, but you can run a regular one. Like biologically, it'll do its thing.
It'll do it.
Yeah. I think most of it's just kind of gimmicky. But so back to the connection fees. The reason that once they put the sewer line in, they'll put a connection fee on your bill. So, you know, every month you're paying, you know, $10, $11 or whatever, and you do that for 20 years. Now, the majority of your connection fee, when you go to do it, they apply that towards your connection fee. So if it's 40,000 and you've been paying all these years and you've already paid 20, so now your connection fee is only 20 grand. So just because it's on the water bill doesn't necessarily mean that you are connected. So that's why they started adding it that's how it used to be years ago, but now they started adding it so people weren't, you know, sticker shocked with $40,000. And that's just to hook up. Like that's not even the work to get it done. So it can get super expensive really fast. So, and sometimes people think it's us. You know, they're like, "You're crazy. You want $60,000 to put a sewer line in?" And it's like, well, 40 something of it's just connection fees, you know. So anyhow, that's that. Were you going to say something else on that?
Generally, when we find that a client, on like septic, if they don't have a definitive answer, we always recommend a camera inspection, because if you live in a home, especially if you've been in that house for an extended amount of time, and you're not sure if you're on septic, it's a good idea to get that system looked at, because odds are it probably needs to be serviced as well. So all these things are good indicators, but at the end of the day, the only way to get a 100% definitive answer, put a camera down there, see what that sewer line's doing, and see if you truly are on septic, because it's not a loss either way. If it needs to be serviced, you can service that tank, if it's a sewer line, now you know, and you can also service the sewer.
And usually, like, we'll ask, you know, how long have you lived here? Have you had this problem before? Like, we ask all those questions up front before we go running, you know, 150 feet of cable inside of a tank that's 5 feet away, you know? Because the customer's like, you made the mistake. Now we're there digging up their septic tank and pulling it. It's just, I mean, that's happened. Has that ever happened to you guys?
Oh.
Not yet?
Oh, yeah.
So you're asking the right questions. And so, yeah, you kind of get a little bit of homework up front. And if they don't know, then we just go at it real cautiously. And you can actually tell. So, and there's another reason when we run this machine, if I have that feeder tension down and I'm just using the lever to feed it in, I don't know what's going on. But if I leave the tension off of it and I can feel the cable and I start putting it in and it's going, you know, just like wanting to take off, most likely it's just feeding down into a tank. So that's a good indication that, oh, this might be on septic. And then we'll pull back and then we'll start running a camera. And when we run the camera, I don't know where it went.
It's over
Oh.
behind Elliot's desk.
So when we run the camera, we have a locator, so we'll run it 5 feet, locate, run it 5 feet, locate, locate. If all of a sudden we can't locate it anymore, then we'll start pulling it back and see where that drop is, and that's how we locate septic tanks too. Should we maybe plug that thing in, maybe we can check this thing out?
The camera?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you grab?
So we'll-
Staging gorgeous and
So we'll, hopefully we have a little charger battery thing that's in these things, so hopefully that it has enough charge to.
What does a little handheld camera run you?
Those ones are only a couple $100. Yeah. But you can't go very far with those. And then these cameras, they have different ones. They have, color cameras, self-leveling heads, because if you don't have a self-leveling head, the picture will be upside down, so it's kind of hard to tell. So those usually run anywhere from 10 to 15,000, and then another couple grand for the locator. And they break quite often. Sometimes you'll be pushing it down the line, and you kink that push rod. It's a couple grand just to repair it.
Yeah, we shouldn't too much.
We just moved to new cameras. So this one has the monitor on top that you can, of course, disconnect. But we went to a new one now, which has just a little device that's built on the handle itself, and then we look at it from the iPad. So we can actually leave, if we go up on a roof vent and run a camera on our iPads, we just give it to the client and they can see it. And then our guys can also have the app on their phone, so they can see exactly what the client's seeing down on the ground. And then we'll run the camera from there. So this is a little bit older version, but they're back ordered. We've been like 3.5 months, I think, waiting for our cameras now. And we've got 10 of them on order.
Nick said any day now.
Huh? Any
Nick said
day?
Any day.
Yeah, we've been hearing that forever.
Okay.
So maybe we'll kind of run, we'll just run in there just to see what that thing kind of looks like. Let me probably just run it up that. I don't know if you guys can all see that.
Sorry, James.
No, you're good.
I want to move it again.
We'll just stretch it out.
Trying to block everybody here.
Can everybody see it?
No, you're good.
You guys all see it?
Yeah. Yeah, see, we can go up that clean out, see if there's any, it might be clean up there, but there's not really any water passing.
Oh, that's a pretty good location.
Go all the way to that cap. So there's a cap on the end, so he went upstream, but you can see pretty much how clear that is. We can see the bottom side of that cap. Let's take a look at this part of the line. So, like if you look at that, line, it's not a smooth circle, because there's just so much scale and buildup in there. So you'll be able to tell if it was nice and smooth. Like let's throw it in this one. This one's a little bit smoother. You'll see the difference like on a clean, smooth line. You see it? How nice, clear, round. So I guess it's almost like what do you get, ultrasound? Those people, I look at those things, I'm like, what are you looking at? And those people know what they're looking at, So it's kind of one of those things that you look at it after a while.
Actually, oversized rod.
Well, and they used to only have the black and white cameras back in the days. It was really bad. Like you're trying to, is that a rock or a root or was it grease? Like you couldn't tell. So, and you can adjust all the lights and things like that on it as well. So, kind of gives you a good idea. And then, you want to do a locate?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then we have a locating device, so once we do find the problem, then we'll locate where it's at. And we could probably even have you guys, mess around and do some locating.
You actually have to turn the locator on the camera.
Rigid.
So like pretend that you don't even know where it's at, like go over there. So you could be anywhere. So you hear the pitch, just the sound, as he points it towards that camera. So you could be anywhere, and as you start pointing it, then you just go towards that location.
I'm actually kind of curious to see if it would do it a little further back.
Oh, yeah, so that's the one right here.
And of course, you could dial the gain up and down, if you want to kind of narrow it in a little bit. And there's like little gauges on that as well, which you guys can, we can mess with that after we go through the thing. But, so basically, once we locate it, then we know exactly where it is. Like some people say, well, how much is it to fix it? And it's like, well, is it 2 feet deep or is it 10 feet deep? There's a big difference. So, and where's it at? Is it out in the grass? Is it underneath the patio? Is it, so it'll tell us the depth and everything.
Yeah, we're so close to it, it won't even tell me that right now.
Yeah, usually within 12 inches. You gotta be more than 12 inches apart, away from it, before you'll get a reading. But, so anyhow,
show the screen to everybody?
Huh?
You want me to show the screen to everybody? You want to wait till we go outside when we do that?
I think we'll wait, that way they can put gloves on. I don't think anybody really wants to touch it with no gloves. So anyhow, does that shine a little bit more light on our plan of attack of how we get to a problem that's in the main? I mean, like that was a lot to cover, just to find out what the problem is, But some people just don't realize all the tools that it takes to, just to really get you an accurate pricing to do the repair. Like, have you ever called somebody and say, hey, how much do you charge to, I got a problem with my sewer line, or it could be whatever. And they say, well, we got to come out and look at it. You're like, you can't just give me a price over the phone? Like, we get that all the time. And it's like, it'd take me longer to explain it to you of how we get to that, to give you a right price than just to come out there and show you how it's done. So you got to be patient with people. If you ever are calling someone looking for a price, they say we got to come take a look at it. Sometimes there is a reason of why they need to come take a look at it to really get you something accurate.
Is that locator just off the sound? Is that what
It's off of megahertz, so 60 megahertz. Yeah, see, there's a little sawn that's inside that spring, so it's 12 inches back from the end of the head. So when we locate it, we're actually locating it 12 inches behind the camera. It's in the cone of that camera.
Is it true you perform leads colonoscopy with the micro?
Twice.
That's what Jack told me.
Only when it was new. Essentially, it's the same thing, right? Just a mini camera. I mean, this is a much bigger one.
Yeah,
But, I mean, when you go to a doctor and you got to get a camera, all right.
Camera's like this big. Not that big.
Not that big?
No, it's a
Probably more of
bigger.
this stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think you want to take something like that. Any other questions? No? Go ahead.
Do you find a lot of roots on the ABS pipes?
So not really. ABS pretty solid. Only thing we find anytime we'll find roots in there is usually if somebody puts a sewer line in, like in Rancho's a prime example. Upland's another one. Super rocky. They'll put a sewer line in and then they'll just start pushing the rocks in with a tractor and crack the line, and over time then those roots grow in ABS. That's really about the only time that you find it. Because with ABS you're gluing the fittings, you're gluing them together on the pipe, and it's actually creating a weld. So it's welding them, and there's no way for roots to grow in.
I've seen like big tree roots, like arm size, that top of the big is.
I was just gonna say, so what they will do is remember I was saying they grow along the pipe, and sometimes those roots will grow so big and then they're trying to squeeze between a rock and the pipe, and then, but they're just keep growing, and little by little, it'll just force that pipe inside. So we'll camera a line, and then you'll see it's almost inverted, you know, and you see this big bubble, and I'm like, what is this? And usually it's a root outside that's just pushing it. So it'll push it in.
Break at that point? Because it's more.
Not, ABS is pretty durable. I mean, like you can get it to a point, if it's done fast, then of course you can crack it, but if you're pushing on it nice and slow, you can almost get that thing like almost flat without it just splitting, you know, but if you push fast, then yeah. But a root ain't, you know, it's growing over years, you know, so it takes a long time for it to make that happen.
So then how do you, when you come in and cut that pipe out and reroute it versus messing with the tree at all?
So sometimes,
Don't touch that tree, man.
yeah, sometimes we will reroute around a tree, or we have another machine that we'll be bringing in when we show you the lining process. It's called pipe bursting. Actually, we could probably play the video on that. So I'll show you these two other ways that we do repairs if we can get the line. So if the line is a candidate for lining, then we shoot the lining. If it's not, because we could do everything from one hole. So I can dig a hole up by the house where the sewer line is, clean the line, and shoot one continuous line all the way out to the city, so you'll never have a problem again. And we give a 50-year warranty on it. Like, that's how strong it is. And they've been using it in Europe for years. The other way is pipe bursting. And what that is, we have to dig up two holes. We'll show you a video on both of them. So we do 2 holes, and we run a cable through there, and then we hook like a missile head to it with pipe, and we pull a new line through it and bust the old one out of the way. So in a case like that, where a root like did that, we would use bursting and not lining, because lining would not do you any good. Yeah, so that's the pipe. That's the pipe bursting. So yeah, we could play that one. So these are little videos that we play for our clients to have them have a little better understanding.
Here at Option 1, we specialize in trenchless sewer repair for your home or business. Our process, called trenchless pipe bursting, allows us to rehabilitate your sewer lateral from house to street back to better than new condition by bursting out your old pipe and replacing it with a new one without having to dig up your property. First, we run a camera down into your sewer pipes to identify any potential problems. Once we determine the sewer line is able to be rehabilitated, we dig 2 small pits, one for entry and the other for exit. Next, we position the bursting head into the hose pipe and then connect a cable from the bursting head to the pneumatic press at the end location. Once engaged, the pneumatic press slowly pulls the bursting head all the way through the entire length of the pipe, bursting out the old damaged pipe while simultaneously pulling in a brand new pipe. The new pipe has no seams or joints, eliminating any future root penetration or leaks. The pipe is then heat fused on both ends of the pipe, ensuring a watertight seal. Once completed, we then backfill the small pits and restore your property back to its original condition. If you would like to learn more about our trenchless sewer...
So that's like a good example there where, you know, we may go to a house and it's all concrete. You know, people poured concrete on the side of their driveways and patios and stamped and all that stuff, and you don't want to destroy it all. We could just make 2 little inserts and then go that way. We'll play that other one too. So that was pipe bursting. That's one candidate. If the pipe is just in too bad a shape, then we'll do that. If the pipe's in decent condition, then we'll do this process.
Option 1 Plumbing provides the most environmentally friendly trenchless plumbing repair alternative called CIPP, or Cured in Place Pipe Repair. First, a small camera is inserted into your sewer system to identify any scale, cracks, or root intrusion. Then the pipes are cleaned by a process called hydrojetting, which uses highly pressurized water to push out all roots and scale buildup, leaving pipes ready for epoxy coating. Once completed, we are ready to line your sewer lateral. A piece of flexible liner is cut to fit the entire length of the pipe. Next, an epoxy mixture is poured directly into the liner opening. Then a roller is used to ensure every inch of liner is fully saturated with resin. The prep liner is then coiled inside an inversion drum. Then the starting end of the liner is securely taped to the inverter drum nozzle, making an airtight seal. Air pressure pushes or inverts the liner into the pipe all the way down through the interior. Next, a calibrated balloon-like tube, or cal tube, is inverted into the epoxy liner and is filled with air, pressing the epoxy liner against the interior of the damaged pipe. The liner is then allowed to cure in place for 4 to 7 hours. When the liner is fully cured, the cal tube is deflated and removed, leaving behind a fully rehabilitated pipe. Without digging up your property, trenchless sewer repair will reinforce and strengthen your existing pipes to last decades. If you would like to learn more about our trenchless sewer rehabilitation process, give us a call today at 1-800-90...
I probably should have showed you that video before we did anything else. It probably would have made a lot more sense as we talk about everything.
How much does that cost?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, both.
The lining?
Yeah, both, in the pipe bursting. What would that run you? Let's say it's 30 feet of both.
Like if everything's ready to go, like if it's dug up and cleaned out and ready, because that all depends too on how bad it is, right?
Yeah.
So if it's all ready to go, usually it's about $150 a foot. That is what we charge.
And that's both of them, it's the same price, or?
Yeah, they're roughly about the same price.
So it's just more of your choice?
Yeah, the pipe, it depends on what it's a candidate for. Like usually the pipe bursting, we might, sometimes a little bit more expensive because we have to dig a second hole. And sometimes that second hole is at the street and it's 8 feet deep and we need shoring and all that other stuff that goes along with it, which just, raises the price on everything. So, how are we looking on time? What time is it?
About 7:30.
So about halfway, right? Okay.
So the break, and then while we're on the break, I can set the demo up.
Yeah, so we'll take like a 10-15 minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll set this stuff up outside, and we'll clean up that cast iron and show you how this machine works from that point. All right.
So when we looked inside that pipe earlier, when we were inside, you can see, obviously you can imagine, this is pretty much what the pipe looked like when it was brand new. This is where another piece of pipe met up inside that hub. Now over the years of water flowing through it and all the things that we wash down our drains come off of our bodies, that's what attaches itself to the inside of the pipe and starts causing buildup. Now you can see on the inside of that pipe, over a long period of time, the inside of it will start to close down and clog like an artery. So one thing that our company is really big into is giving options. This is an option for a cast iron line. Now every single line that we look at has to go through what we call a candidacy process. So if we find the line has mass amounts of buildup inside of it, but it's still salvageable, this is one of the main things that we can do in order to accomplish this. This is the liner that shot through. Now this is an Orangeburg pipe, not a cast iron pipe, but just pretend this is cast iron. Now you guys can see how smooth the inside of that line is and how nice and smooth the surface is. Now anytime we shoot a liner, it's going to take the existing shape of what's there. Now we're actually dealing with a job in Riverside right now where they have how long is that sewer line, Angus?
162 feet.
162 feet. So a company went out there 10 years ago and shot one of these liners through a cast iron line and did nothing to prep the line. They shot that liner through a pipe that looked just like this. Now that line's had nothing but problems since, because number one, there's no clean surface for that lining material to attach itself to, and number two, that lining material is mimicking whatever it folds over on the inside of the pipe. So if you have rough valleys, edges, all that stuff, that lining material is going to take the same shape as that. And then also it's going to take that same inside diameter. So if you have 50, 60, 70 years of buildup inside this pipe and it's closed itself off from what was once a 4-inch or a 3-inch is now maybe 3.5 or 2.5, that liner is going to take that same shape. So again, descaler is a process that we take to help remedy that, to prep it for a liner, or maybe just clean it up and get you a little bit more time out of that cast iron.
Sometimes when you descale, you can find that it's cracked up.
Here, I'll descale this way just in case so it doesn't fling. So a descaling chain is fairly simple. It's just actually a bunch of chain links with like tungsten heads welded to it. I don't know if you guys can all see that. So this machine essentially operates off the principle of brute force. It rotates at a high RPM. I can adjust that on the motor of this. It rotates, spins, and hones the inside of the pipe out. Similar to like what you would do on an engine if you're honing out the cylinder wall. Does the exact same thing. Now I can dictate how much material I'm scraping off the inside of the pipe by how I set this chain. So when we get trained on this machine, generally we set it up to where what they would consider a pretty taut hammock. A hammock that's drawn pretty tight. Now the closer I bring these ends together, the wider my blades are gonna fan out, the more material I'm gonna take off the inside. So when I'm going into this pipe, I'm always gonna anticipate the worst case scenario. I don't wanna blow this entire line apart. So what I do is I set my chains out as far apart as I can to where I'm still gonna take off a decent enough material to show me what's underneath, and but I'm not taking off too much to where I can compromise the structural integrity. So right now that kind of looks like a hammock that's pulled a little bit tight.
Would
Now,
that only be used on a cast iron?
huh?
Would that only be used on a cast iron?
Generally, yes, we do in some situations with ABS for large amounts of grease buildup, because a lot of times grease can solidify to where it's hard as a rock. So I can set this machine up to where I'm scraping just enough to where it's not actually digging into the pipe, but it's getting rid of anything that's built up on the inside of it. But this machine's primary function is cast iron. And then there's also some other attachments and stuff that we can put on that we can probably talk about later on. But
There's been other applications that we've used it in where somebody gets their shower tile and they wash all the grout down the drain and then it fills up halfway. That's another common one, so we'll go in there and grind all the grout.
Right, because that grout will go down the line and kind of solidify. A cable really doesn't do much. This goes in there and scours every inch of that pipe, so it kind of breaks all that stuff and brings it away. Now, as you guys can see inside the middle of this cable, I have a stiffener here. The reason for this stiffener is because these two ends of the cable are heavy. So when this thing starts spinning at a high RPM, gravity wants to, or the centrifugal force wants to pull these two ends together, which will eventually cause a bow and a weak spot in the center of this cable, which is why we leave this sheath there. That way the sheath is there to counteract that force and keep that cable nice and strong so nothing breaks. So a good way to test this, after I put this thing together, you see how it creates just a perfect ball, and it looks very controlled. It's not flopping around, it's not acting out of control, so I know it's going to act just like this inside the pipe. So I'm taking a brute force, and I have the most control of it as I possibly can, to where now I'm just carving off material. I'm not actually digging into the pipe and destroying it, because that's a big concern that a lot of people have with this. So this is a good demonstration I do for a lot of clients to show. It's spinning really fast, but it looks very controlled. So when I put it inside the pipe, Jack, can I borrow you please? Yes. It's kind of hard to foot pedal this thing when you're on your knees. Just go ahead and when I tell you, go ahead and turn it on. Okay, go ahead. Dennis, did you get a good picture of the inside of the pipe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me pull that up. Just pull that cable a little bit out of the way.
All right, go ahead, Jack. So this is a fairly easy setup to descale, because I have all the control in the world and I can actually see this pipe. Generally when I'm descaling this line, I'm going through a riser in the pipes, you know, 4 or 5 feet under the ground, and I can't really see what's going on. So as Larry said earlier, when we're pushing that cable in by hand, we're doing everything off of feel. So I've operated this machine enough to know what I'm going up against, how much scale I'm taking off. If I'm having to push it super hard, I know I'm probably digging too much into the pipe. There's more scale buildup in there than what was led to believe from doing the candidacy process, which is our camera inspection. So I'll pull the chains out, tighten them up a little bit so where I'm not taking so much scale off, and then reassess and go back in. So this is a fairly simple setup, but I'll have you guys come forward and look. So this was just after a couple seconds, not making any full passes. Oh, I should probably go that way because there's not a giant lip. So you can see everything kind of comes off just in a dust. This machine does a really good job of pounding all that stuff out. But if you guys want to come up and kind of take a look and see just after maybe 15-20 seconds how much that's actually taken off. Yeah.
So my question is, when you first started, and then as you're working your way through from the beginning, do you start to feel like it's getting easier, and then that's telling you you're taking it off and going?
So what I'm feeling for is this machine actually has a clutch on it. So I generally try and set it up to where when I start running into a mass amount of material, that clutch will engage. So that clutch is there for to stop that centrifugal force without actually bringing it back to the cable. Because like older machines, when those chains stopped, the whole cable would flip over. And that obviously is pretty dangerous. So these machines now, that's an angle grinder that's inside there. So that's when it catches on something, now you'll just hear that clutch engage and my cable just stops spinning. So that's what I'm feeling for. So generally I'll try and set it up to where when I'm pushing through and going at a decent speed, I want to hear that clutch engage. That way I know that I'm actually grinding the material, so I can either reassess, pull it back out and bring the length out or in on my chains, or bring the speed up on it to see if I can get through what I'm going through. It's all a feeling game. A lot of times in drain maintenance and drain cleaning, I mean, I'm sure you've done it a million times, it's all in what you feel. You have to know what your machine's doing, what it's coming up against, and how you can best attack whatever situation that you're in with the equipment that you have. But again, just in those small little passes, 15-20 seconds, I mean, I've brought that pipe almost back to its original state. And that's, like I said, that is just quick in and out, not really spending much time focusing on it. Now, if I spent another 5-10 minutes on this, I can make this pipe look brand new. Now, at this point right here, a lot of people would look at it and go, it's back. No need for any further work. And that's kind of where this is the point right now where we would heavily recommend we do a line replacement or shoot a liner, something along those lines, a spot repair, because in 10 or 15 years, I may not be able to do this again, or 5 years or 6 months down the road, I may not be able to do this again. And for you to be able to shoot a liner or do a pipe burst, that pipe has to be open and it has to be in decent shape. So again, like I said, you could get a lot more time out of a cast iron line by taking this process, but generally we try to use this as a stepping stone to a more permanent replacement. This is a really good, but still unfortunately a temporary fix. Any questions?
If somebody comes back like and says, hey, I can't afford the liner to go in right now, next month I'll have the money, will you have to redo the whole process again?
It depends. It depends on what process that we take to do the replacement. But a lot of times, no.
Scaled it in a month or two now, they want to do it, because after we're done descaling, I mean, he just dumped the rust out, but normally all that stuff's sitting on the bottom of the pipe. So after we're done with that, we run that hydrojetter back through there, flush all the debris that we just knocked off, flush it out, recamera it, everything looks good. Or if we see a spot, we'll put the descaler there, pull the camera back, descale it again, keep flushing it until we get it clean. A month or two from now, you're not going to get rust build up in a month or two. Okay. It'll take a year or two before it starts to do its scaling again. Okay. So if it's just a few months, we may have to come back and just rejet it, and then we can shoot a liner. Okay.
Right. But that's the beauty of the options that we give. Generally, our options will include all that stuff.
And this is a process, like if you were doing a lining on a cast iron line, we have to do this process first anyhow, so it's not like it's going to cost you any more. If you did this and then we're going to shoot a liner later on, it's really the same thing, because we would have had to do this process already. So that's paid for out of the way. Next step is just the liner, which is the per footage charge that we were talking about earlier. So, but what needs to be done beforehand? Is it a nice clean pipe ready to go? 100, depending on the piping and everything, but around $150 a foot. But if you got to do descaling and all this other stuff on top of it, then it becomes different. And how bad the scaling is. Like I said, sometimes They might only be down to 3 inch or 3.5 inch. But we've been to some where they're completely closed, like there's a 1 inch hole. So it's going to take us that much longer to descale it and that much longer to flush it out.
Yeah,
So,
the descaling can turn into a super technical process, especially if you're doing it throughout the house, because this is our smallest descaler. We have 2 more descalers that step up in size that you have to run off generators and stuff, because most houses don't have that kind of power. So generally, descaling, if we're doing a full house, it can turn into a very involved process. And you're going into it knowing that there's a decent amount of chance that this line could already be completely gone, to where once we're done descaling it, you have to do a line replacement. So, anyone have any more questions on this machine? Come on, I'm an open book. Nothing? Not even our guys? You knew everything about descaling already?
Oh, I know that machine very well.
Awesome. What about you, Frank? Nothing? Cool. Good. All right. Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, that's the descaler. And no, another thing to talk about too, real quick, is I have different. So this chain right here is for. They sell it as a 4-inch, but I find it works pretty efficient on 3-inch and 4-inch. And I also have smaller chains for smaller size pipes. And then obviously when we jump up to like bigger pipes, like this machine really is comfortable with 3-inch and down. 4-inch, the cable on this thing's only about 50 feet, 60 feet. So it's a little bit of a push, but our bigger machines and stuff, we can go up into the hundreds with liters and stuff like that. And those ones we utilize for 4-inch and 6-inch and 8-inch and up. And then, yeah, those are the next 2 sizes up. And then, like I said, we'll probably talk about another class too, but there's different attachments that we can actually put on this machine to utilize different reasons. So like if we shoot a liner and there's tie-ins in that, we can put different attachments on this thing to send down that line to reinstate that line, which I'm sure you'll probably want to get. Do you want to get into a different class?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll talk about that as well. Yeah.
If you get to where the hole is so small, why would you go into descaling and not just replace the pipe?
Well, you could replace it. So a long time ago, we had no option but to jackhammer it up or dig it up to do a line replacement, which is extremely invasive. The technologies that we have available to us today allow us to replace that line, whether we're bursting or lining. Those technologies allow us to do it with a lot less damage. But again, even with lining, that liner is going to take that same shape of the pipe. So if it's closed up that much, we need to descale it, get that scale build off to open it. If we're bursting it, we still have to be able to slide a cable through that line to pull the new line into place. So of course, if that line's choked up so much, which we've had plenty of situations to where it's just not descalable because there's so much buildup and it's so packed, now we can go into talking about maybe just digging up that section and performing a spot repair. Then we can go with another option that doesn't create as much work or as much.
Just be to preserve what the owner has, that not breaking their concrete or
right.
their
Yeah, nowadays there's so many technologies available to us to where we don't have to destroy your entire house. That's what makes this stuff so enticing, because if I offered the fact to go inside your house and re-drain the entire thing, and I could do the job in 3 days, and I only have 4 or 5 holes throughout your house, that sounds a lot better than me saying I have to come in and blow your entire house apart and we're going to be there for a week and a half or 2 weeks. So we really try and utilize as much of the technology we have available to us to make it easier on us and less stressful on our clients. Because when you come in and start tearing apart a house, someone's home, that can take a mental toll on you. And we've had plenty of times where we've had to pay to have clients go in hotels because they can't be there, because it's a big thing tearing apart someone's home. So we offer all these things to help kind of counteract that, to make it easier for you and us as well. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sometimes you're tearing up, not just the floors, but they could have travertine or marble, or
yeah,
there's fireplaces and other things that you got to go underneath, or cabinets. You're taking out cabinets, so it's not just the pipe replacement; it's all the other costs to re-put it all back together too.
Yep.
So it can get super expensive quick.
And depth is another huge thing. Like that lining process that Larry was talking about, we can utilize that by digging a hole at the house. I'd say 80% of the time the sewer line outside your house is within 3 to 5 feet. So that's a fairly simple hole for us to dig. But now if we have to dig it up at the street, most of the time that's well over 6 feet. So that's another great thing about the lining, is that I can utilize that technology to replace your entire sewer line and only have to dig a hole at the shallowest point. So depth is another huge factor for this equipment too. So not including the material that you're going through, the travertine or the tile or the custom brickwork or whatever, but also how far we have to go down. There's tons of factors that come into play in bidding these projects.
Is it still 5 feet before you have to trench? Or is it at
That's just a general thing. We've dug holes that were, oh God. I've been in holes that were 25, 30 feet deep, where I'm looking up at him on the tractor and he's a little dot, and there's a temperature change, and I'm down there in a harness and a rig, and I've got walls and shoring built around me. So sometimes, again, those situations we have zero options. That's our only option, is to dig it up and get to it. But that's the whole premise of this. If people maintenance their pipes and do these things properly, then we can offer you those things. But that's why I always talk to our clients, the pipe has to be a candidate for it. It has to be in a candidacy process. Not every line is salvageable like this. So we always try and make that abundantly clear that, you know, if we can get through this now, 5 years down the road, we might not be able to do this again. And now you have to jackhammer it up, and in which case your price goes up.
What's the maintenance time period there?
Generally, like for hydrojetting or something like this is a pretty invasive process. This you would probably only have to do, what would you say, every 3 to 5 years?
Descaling?
Yeah, descaling.
5 to 7?
5 to 7 years. Hydrojetting, depending upon the use, so if it's like a restaurant or something like that, we have restaurants that are set up on a monthly basis, 3-month basis, 6-month basis, and a yearly basis. To where houses, generally we try and recommend every 6 months to a year for hydrojetting, unless it's a kitchen line. So whole house jetting maintenance, probably every 6 months to a year for sure.
And that runs you about, depends on the size of the house?
All situational dependent. Do you have proper access to it? You know, how far are we having to pull hose? Things like that. I mean, we don't have a general basis for pricing on doing whole house jettings, do we?
It depends on how many bathrooms.
Yeah.
You know, some people have bar sinks or a vegetable sink and a kitchen sink. Like, there's all kinds of variables.
Yeah. So every situation, we always joke about it. If I have a guy and I'm gonna say you're gonna do 3 kitchen sink stoppages today, and 3 kitchen sink stoppages tomorrow, and 3 kitchen sink stoppages the next day, he could get home at 11 o'clock in the morning this day. He can get home 2 days later on this day. He can get home a week later on this day. If I told you you're gonna do the same thing every day, it all changes every single time. That's the beauty of plumbing, is every day is different no matter what you're doing. So yeah, every situation changes constantly.
Hydrojetting won't achieve the same outcome if you just...
No, unfortunately. Hydrojetting is it's like if you sent like a little miniature man down there with a pressure washer. Now we have hydrojetting heads that can go up to 4,000 psi to cut through roots and stuff like that, and they actually sell a chain head for a hydrojetter, which we have one of those as well. But it doesn't really take the same effect as this machine. They generally work much better in unison, not one or the other. And sometimes they have to be used in unison. Hydrojetting is another option too, but that's more so for like root intrusion or grease buildup. Something soft that we can use high pressured water to blast off. Scale is much more like concrete. So it's like using a pressure washer to jackhammer. It's generally the same effect. You might flake a little bit off the top, but it's not going to get through it. You actually need to send a jackhammer in there to blow the concrete apart. So that's why we utilize the brute force of the chains.
It'd be mechanical.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And like I said, they work very well in unison. Once we're done descaling, then we send a hydrojetter through there, like what Larry's saying. We pull all that scale buildup out, and we do a reassessment of the line. Anything else? All right.
All right, thank you, Brett.
So, you know, pressure washers that you can pick up for $300 and convert it to, because that's all it is, and you know, just like 4 gallons a minute, no, 1.5 gallons a minute or 2 gallons a minute, you know, like 1,500 psi. What is this? 1.2. 1.2. Yeah. So the other ones that we buy that they sell like through the supply houses, it is I think they're up to like 1.8, 2 gallons a minute at 1,500 psi. So it's almost pretty much the same. This will do the same job, but it just takes a little bit longer because you're messing with it. But it's basically just a little nozzle that's on the end, and it has, you know, 5 holes on the back. So the water, like we saw in that video, the water is spraying backwards, and that's what's propelling it to go in the line. So it's doing all the work, going in, and as it's spraying back on that 45-degree angle, it's washing the piping at the same time. So, you're going in, just working it back and forth, and, camera, make sure it's good, go to the next, keep going, keep going, keep going. I don't know that hose because we got to roll it up the correct way. So this is the last piece that I want to talk about, and you can see this. So this toilet auger. Now, when you buy a toilet auger, it comes like this, with like a bulb head on it, and that's so it makes its way nice and smooth through the toilet. But we actually stretch this whole thing out, and then we cut it. So now I have a much bigger hook. This little hook is in the middle of the bulb, so if there's something that is on the side of the piping, with this, I'm scraping the side of the piping and I can grab it. Like if it's a toy, or we've pulled out so many things from toilets, but with this one, if it's on the side of the pipe, I won't be able to grab it because the hook is up off the ground. So why they make them like this is just really to get through, but it's not very effective. So if you do have I know homeowners have them, if you have one, stretch it out like this and cut it, and it'll be 10 times more effective. And this is just strictly for toilets only. So there's 2 different types of augers. So this will make it just through the toilet. If we had that toilet here, we put this down inside there. So you spin this out. So put it down there, get it going, and then now you're just cranking this auger as you're going through to try to grab whatever's in there. And like even, it could be Q-tips, a whole bunch of things inside of the toilet. But this, by the time it makes it through the trap and down, it's only enough cable to go just to the exterior of the toilet. But sometimes things make it through the toilet, and then as soon as it goes down through the floor, it'll get caught in that first 90. So if you buy an inexpensive toilet auger, you're only going to have that much cable. And on these ones, does this one have the extension? Yeah. So on this one, there's a little button here, and I can extend it. So now once you get in there so far, and I can now keep cranking it, and so I'll be through the toilet and into the piping now. So it's just called an extension auger. But the important thing was, I just wanted to show you the ends of it. I know some guys still have them with the bulb on the end, so just cut it off and it'll be way more effective. And then if anybody ever buys one, buy one with the extension.
How much do those typically run?
I don't know. 15. These are about 50, and the other ones are probably like 25, 30 bucks probably.
They got this little cheap black one we try to get for 10 bucks.
Yeah, but those are for labs. So they have a little mini version of this just to do like bathroom sinks that will just go down like a foot, and it's a 1/4-inch cable too. It's a thinner cable. That's what they use those little tiny ones for. But the other one is about this size, but it's a skinnier tube, and the cable's flimsy too.
I have a question. When you say to stretch the end of it to make it, and then you cut the end and all that, do you still try to keep it within that circular? Only for the fear that it might.
Yeah, so on that bulb, this used to have a bulb on it, right?
Yes.
And we just grab that bulb and pull it and stretch this whole spring out, and then just cut it. We get about 3 decent sized swirls on it. That's it. So we cut it, because when you're gonna, let's say most of the time, what would you typically pull out of a toilet? And most of the time, is it gonna like Q-tips or
sewer rats,
tampons, comb, sewer rats,
paper towels,
yeah, baby wipes, shampoo, cell phones,
rags.
The what?
It's usually the wooden Q-tips, not usually the paper.
Wooden?
Yeah.
I didn't know they sold wooden Q-tips.
I don't know why, but they...
Kids' toys, another huge
Yeah,
one.
kids' toys, that's a big one. So, and when we cut it, we're cutting that thing on an angle, so we're making a sharp point on it, so it's pretty sharp.
I guess my question was, it won't harm the porcelain or on the toilet as you're doing it?
Because when you put the auger in there, you've already got this extended out, right?
Yeah.
So you're already putting this thing up in the trap, so you're not scratching the toilet. Now, people will let this plastic sleeve get worn off. Like, look at that one right there. It's pushed up on it. That plastic sleeve is pushed up, and I've had it where guys just get it worn out, and they just keep on going, and they'll put this thing in there, and they start snaking the line, and now they scratch the whole bottom of the toilet up. And by the way, if you do ever have a toilet that has scratches in it, so you could just use a pumice stone and scrub it, and it'll come back to normal porcelain.
Hey Larry, what would you use the pressure washer mainly for in a house?
So on this one, let's say like on a shower, we usually use them for kitchens mainly, because a lot of people, just food, grease buildup, all that stuff. But we also use them on showers. So on showers, sometimes you'll have the drain that the pipe goes down before it hits that P-trap, and it might be like 10, 12 inches of piping before it hits the trap. Well, when you're showering and you got soap and shaving cream and toothpaste or whatever you do in the shower, all that stuff gets built up on that pipe. So, and remember, we're trying to stop sewer gases with that P-trap. So that little vertical riser that's above the water level to the tile of the floor of the shower, that thing sometimes will get built up. So we'll just use this to pressure wash it out. And really, you could scrub it with a toilet brush or something else as well. So you don't have to do it. Mainly, we're using it for kitchens. And here's the thing with kitchens. So let's say you have old galvanized line, and we'll crawl underneath a house, right? And do like when we're doing inspections and stuff. And you look at the galvanized line and you go, it looks like it's in pretty good shape, but it's 70 years old and nobody ever maintains the line. And then sometimes they'll say, well, can you snake the line? Sure, we'll snake it while we're here. All of a sudden we start running our snake and boom, our snake pokes a hole right through it. And it's because on the outside it looks fine, but they never maintain on the inside. And you put grease and food and everything that you scrape off your plates down a line, it starts sticking in that line, then all that stuff will start eating the pipe from the inside out. So on the outside it looks perfect, but the inside we have no idea. So like we have a clause on our invoice that we're snaking this line provided that's in decent condition and it can take a snake. I mean, because the snake really should not break a pipe unless there's it's ready to go, or there's a faulty fitting or something like that. Some people do repairs and they'll put a fitting in backwards or what have you. Is that our alarm? Is that perfect timing?
No. That's why the camera over here.
Oh, the camera? So yeah, there's a few things that we didn't get to go into too much, which we will next week with more of the lining materials and kind of talk about that a little bit deeper. And we'll do the locating. Was there anything here that you guys saw that you would want more explanation on, or that we would bring back with us next week as far as equipment or trying it? We'll definitely bring the camera so we can look at the lines. Maybe we can arrange to bring the bigger jetter. If we do find a line that's bad, we can clean it and show the before and after.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
if not, I was actually just going through the videos on my phone. I can get with these guys. I've got a bunch of them before and afters on things like that too.
I didn't look inside that cast iron. Did it make a big difference?
Yeah, Dennis has some really good before and after.
It did.
We took another one after.
Was everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Like just that small thing? Now, have you guys ever heard of descaling?
No.
Have you guys ever heard of descaling? Neil? No? What'd you think about it?
I was impressed.
I was impressed. It's pretty cool.
Pretty. You think of cleaning drains like you just snake the drain, with a snake and that's it. But
I'd never heard about the lining either.
oh, the lining, yeah.
It's pretty impressive too.
We have a couple other locations like in South Carolina, and they've never heard of pipe bursting, pipe lining, so there's companies that don't even know about that. And descaling, I would say there's only about 50% of the companies around that even do it. Most people don't do it. That little machine is about the only one you can run off regular power, but like Brendan was saying, the bigger ones you have to bring out generators and it's just a whole different thing. And so they just said, forget it, we'll just run snake and that's it, But it's like you could run a snake once a year or whatever and keep a line open. You could do that, but some people don't have time for that, or they take off time off work or whatever. They just want a permanent solution. I want the monkey off my back, because every time that it backs up, it's when we come back from vacation, or it's a Friday night or Christmas or something. It's like when it happens. So like I'm one of those people. I'd rather just buy a new car than have a car that breaks down on me all the time. I just don't have time for it. So it depends on the person. Anybody have any questions? Should we wrap it?
Yes.
Wrap it up? All right, cool. Then we'll get together on Thursday. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good question.